Beneath the pale glow of an early winter dawn, Charlotte International Airport pulsed with restless energy. Fog clung to the parking lot, swallowing headlights and turning travelers into silhouettes dragging their lives behind them. Inside the terminal, sterile fluorescent lights buzzed against wide panes of glass. Announcements echoed through the concourse, blending with the tired shuffle of boots and the low rumble of frustration from passengers bundled in wool and scarves. Angela stood at gate C12, leaning against a cold pillar, one hand locked on the handle of her weathered suitcase. Her wool hat, frayed at the edges, concealed loose strands of blonde hair, and the thinning elbows of her coat whispered of too many winters survived. She studied the boarding screen, then pulled out her phone, pressing a familiar number with trembling fingers. "Mom, I'm flying to New York this morning," she said, her voice soft, fragile but determined. "If this interview works out, maybe things can finally change." On the other end, her mother's voice was quiet, laced with doubt. "Are you certain, Angela?" After the school shut down, after all those rejections, Angela shut her eyes, fighting the ache that threatened to rise in her throat. "I have to try," she whispered. "If I give up now, I'll never know." If there was still a chance. She ended the call quickly, afraid her resolve would crumble if she lingered. A tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away fast, embarrassed even though no one was watching. She glanced at her ticket again. Flight 719 JFK. The letters felt like a lifeline in her hand. Then it came. A piercing sound that cut through the airport like shattered glass. A child's scream. Angela's head snapped toward the noise, scanning the sea of coats and rolling bags. Her gaze landed on a man. Early 30s, dark hair in disarray, face pale with exhaustion, standing at the standby desk. In his arms, he cradled a little girl, maybe 5 years old. The child's skin was frighteningly pale, her eyelids heavy, her breaths shallow and uneven. Tiny spasms rippled through her frail body, forcing her father to clutch her tighter. "Please," the man begged the gate agent, his voice raw and trembling. "She needs a specialist in New York today. I'll pay triple, whatever it takes. Just please, get us on this flight." The agent's voice was clipped but uneasy. "Sir, I'm sorry. The plane is full. Without prior medical clearance, I can't override the system." His shoulders sagged, desperation leaking from every word. "I've been to every airline. I drove through the night. She might not make it to the weekend." Angela's chest tightened. The world around her, boarding, calls, shuffling footsteps, clattering luggage, blurred into static. All she could see was the child's trembling fingers curled weakly into her father's coat. "God help her," Angela whispered. Her grip loosened on the suitcase handle. She didn't check the time. She didn't glance back at her gate. Her feet carried her forward before her mind had even caught up. The little girl's skin was blue-tinged now, her chest rising in uneven gasps. Angela's voice came out steady but tender as she addressed the father. Is she going to be all right?" He looked up, startled by her presence, but too drained to hide the truth. His voice cracked. "The doctor said it could be days, maybe less. She has a severe neurological condition. If we don't reach New York soon, she could slip into a coma." Angela's eyes dropped to her boarding pass. Flight 719, her interview, her chance at survival. But when she looked back at the little girl, so fragile, fighting for every breath, something inside her shifted. "I have a seat on that flight," she said softly. The man blinked. You do?" "Angela, and you need it more than I do." He stared at her, stunned. "Are you certain? Giving up your seat? Most people wouldn't." Angela looked down at her scuffed shoes, then back at him. "I was heading to New York for a job interview. I'm a teacher. Or I was. The school closed, and I've been chasing openings for months. This flight was my one chance." She paused, voice low. "But I can try again. Your daughter doesn't get another chance." For a moment, the airport seemed to fall silent. No footsteps, no voices, just the unspoken weight between them. The man's eyes brimmed with gratitude. Angela turned to the gate agent. "Please, transfer my seat. Flight 719. The attendant's professional mask cracked. She nodded, quietly making the switch. The father swallowed hard. "I don't even know your name. You just saved my little girl's life." Angela smiled faintly. "Then go, while you still can." Before they left, she knelt slightly, pulling a small wooden keychain from her bag, an apple she used to give her students as a keepsake. She placed it in the girl's trembling hand. "This is for you," she whispered. "Your lucky charm." The child stirred, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Her tiny fingers closed around the apple. The man unclasped the hospital bracelet from his daughter's wrist and pressed it into Angela's palm. His voice broke. "It's only plastic, but to me, you deserve the world." Angela held it tightly, her eyes glistening. She watched them disappear through the gate, swallowed by the crowd. In her palm, the flimsy bracelet felt heavier than steel. Later that morning, Angela boarded a cold city bus. The windows fogged with breath, the seats icy against her coat. She sat near the back, forehead pressed lightly against the glass. In her hand, she still clutched the bracelet. Outside, Charlotte blurred by. Gray streets, leafless trees, people rushing nowhere. She thought of her classroom, of sunlight through dusty blinds, of children's laughter and voices that once made her believe she mattered. Her lips trembled, but she held the bracelet tighter. She had given something up, but in her chest, she knew she had chosen right. 3 days had crawled by since Angela gave up her flight. The morning sun crept faintly through the blinds of her small apartment, pale light glancing off walls that felt too quiet. The heater clanked in the corner, struggling against the winter chill. Angela sat at her kitchen table with a chipped mug in front of her. No coffee, only lukewarm water. A piece of dry toast lay untouched on the plate. The silence was thick, pressing against her shoulders. On the floor, by the leg of the table, still lay the torn letter, the invitation for the interview in New York. The halves of it looked like broken wings. Next to it, untouched since that day at the airport, rested the hospital bracelet, thin plastic, faded ink. Yet it weighed on her as though it carried a child's entire future. Her chest ached with questions she could not answer. Had the girl made it? Had she reached the hospital in time? Or had Angela only delayed the inevitable? Then, a sound jolted. A knock at the door. She froze, toast halfway to her lips. Nobody visited her. For a heartbeat, she wondered if she'd imagined it. Then it came again. 2 firm, deliberate taps. Angela rose slowly, every step echoing against the floorboards. She paused with her hand on the doorknob, breath caught in her throat. Then with a shaky twist, she opened the door. There he was. Mark. He looked different in the daylight. No longer frantic, no longer worn down by exhaustion. His dark hair was combed neatly, his coat buttoned, his presence steady and composed. In one hand, he held a modest bouquet of daisies, fresh and bright against the gray of winter. In the other, a sealed envelope. Angela blinked, speechless. How did you find me?" His smile was soft. "It wasn't hard. Your name was on the ticket transfer. I checked school district records." Angela's gaze dropped to the flowers, then back to his eyes. "Why are you here?" Mark shifted slightly, his voice carrying both weight and warmth. "Because I couldn't just disappear after what you did. You gave up something precious, without hesitation, for 2 strangers. After I boarded that flight, after Linda was admitted, I couldn't stop thinking about you." Angela's throat tightened. "It felt like the only choice," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "No, it was more than that. You didn't just help my daughter. You reminded me there are still people who lead with kindness." He extended the envelope. Angela took it slowly, their fingers brushing for just an instant. She unfolded the letter, her brows furrowing as her eyes caught the embossed logo. Lighthouse Learning. "What is this?" she asked. Mark's tone shifted. Calm, steady, but filled with meaning. "I'm the founder of Lighthouse Learning. We run schools for children with autism and other special needs. We opened a new campus here in Charlotte. I was visiting when Linda fell ill." Angela's lips parted. You run schools?" "I do," Mark said. "And we need teachers. Not just anyone. The kind who sees children for who they are, not just what they can't do. The kind who gives everything, even when no one's watching." Angela stared down at the letter, the words blurring for a moment. "You're offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a classroom," he replied softly. "One that's waiting for a teacher exactly like you." Her eyes flicked up, heavy with disbelief. But what if I'm not good enough anymore? I've been out of work for months. I've lost so much. Mark stepped closer, his voice low. Unwavering. I saw you give away your one shot at starting over, just so a sick child could live. That tells me more than any resume ever could. Our students need someone who leads with heart, and you are that person. Angela felt her defenses falter, a fragile spark of hope stirring where only emptiness had been. She clutched the letter, her voice unsteady. Why me? Mark's smile was gentle, not pitying, but full of quiet certainty. Because when no one else moved, you did. For the first time in weeks, Angela felt something she thought she had lost. Not certainty, not security, but possibility. Angela stood at the front of the classroom, her palms resting lightly on the teacher's desk. The room was quiet. Too quiet. A dozen children sat scattered at their desks, each in their own world. Some rocked gently in their seats, others stared at the floor, and a few avoided her eyes completely. Not a single voice answered when she called their names. This was her first day at Lighthouse Learning, and the silence felt heavy, almost defiant. But Angela didn't flinch. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a handmade book, pages stitched together with thread, filled with her own colorful drawings. She began to read, her voice steady and calm, a story about a little fox who braved a storm and found courage on the other side. At first, not one child looked up. But then, a flicker. A boy's fingers tapped along in rhythm with her words. A girl blinked slowly, her head tilting just slightly, listening. Small signs, almost imperceptible, but they were there. It was a beginning. In the days that followed, Angela poured everything she had into her new classroom. She tried color-matching games with painted blocks, soft music with bells and drums, finger painting on textured paper. She experimented, failed, adjusted, and tried again. She studied the children with care, learning what soothed them and what unsettled them. There was Mia, who cried every morning at drop-off. On the third day, Angela crouched beside her, whispering the start of a new story. Slowly, the sobs subsided. By the end of the week, Mia smiled. One afternoon, a mother approached Angela with tears in her eyes. "My daughter hugged you," she said, voice trembling. "She's never done that before. Thank you." Angela could only nod, overwhelmed. Those little victories became treasures she carried home each night. From the hallway, Mark often watched. At first, he kept his distance, observing quietly. But gradually, he joined in, handing out paper, folding paper boats with the children, even crouching on the floor to help during story time. He never interfered, only supported, watching Angela with a quiet respect that spoke louder than words. One afternoon, while preparing a classroom display about dreams, they sat side by side, cutting colored paper into sail shapes. The children had drawn pictures of who they wanted to be: astronauts, bakers, dancers. A little boy looked up from his drawing and asked innocently, "Are you two friends?" Angela froze for a beat, unsure what to say. Mark chuckled softly, his eyes glancing toward her. "Very special friends," he said warmly. Angela laughed too, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, though her heart fluttered at the sound of his answer. Late one evening, long after the children had gone home, Angela stayed behind under the hum of the classroom lights, arranging supplies for the next day. She didn't hear Mark until he set a steaming mug of tea beside her. "You should rest," he said gently. "You've done enough for today." Angela shook her head with a faint smile. "I like staying. This place, it makes me feel alive. Again." He sat across from her in the quiet, his expression softened by the shadows. After a long pause, his voice dropped low. "I lost my wife when Linda was just 2. She was the brave one, especially with children. These schools, they're all in her memory." Angela's eyes met his. Her chest ached at the honesty in his words. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Mark nodded slowly. "It's okay. This place keeps her alive in a way. It reminds me who she was and who I want to be." Angela shared her own story: the school that closed, the rejection letters that piled up, the nights she believed she'd lost the best part of herself. Mark didn't offer cliches. He just looked at her, his voice soft but certain. "You didn't lose it. You just needed the right place for it to shine." The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt warm. And something, quiet, delicate, undeniable, shifted between them that night. Weeks passed, and the halls of Lighthouse Learning began to feel less like a place of silence and more like a place where small miracles stirred. Angela's classroom blossomed. The walls, once bare, now bloomed with student artwork, finger-painted suns, collages of colored paper, stick figures holding hands, and the children, they were changing, slowly, steadily. A boy who had never spoken began humming along to her stories. A girl who once refused eye contact now pressed a crayon into Angela's hand, as if asking her to draw beside her. One afternoon, during a staff meeting, Mark stood at the front of the library with a folder in his hand. His voice carried both authority and pride. "We've all seen the transformation happening in room 4, he said, looking at the team of teachers. The patience, the breakthroughs, the trust being built. It's time we recognize what true leadership looks like. His eyes found Angela. This school needs a principal who leads with heart, someone who understands that compassion is just as powerful as strategy. Angela blinked, stunned. Me? She whispered under her breath. Mark's smile was steady. You've been leading us from the start. Tears stung her eyes as he handed her the folder. Her fingers trembled as she took it, the weight of trust almost overwhelming. Later that evening, in the quiet of the hallway, Mark approached her with something small in his hand, a worn leather notebook. On the cover, embossed in fading letters, were the words, "Lead with kindness." I've carried this for years, he admitted softly, waiting for the right person to give it to. Angela opened it, flipping through pages filled with sketches, notes, and quotes about teaching. Her heart swelled. For the first time in years, she felt fully seen, not for her failures, but for everything she still had to give. It was late afternoon when a knock sounded at her office door. Angela rose, smoothing the papers on her desk, and opened it. There they were. Mark stood in the doorway, and beside him, holding his hand, was a little girl with bright, sparkling eyes. Linda. Angela's breath caught. The frail, trembling child she had last seen in the airport was gone. In her place stood a girl full of color and life, her hair falling in soft waves, her cheeks flushed with health. When Linda spotted her, she broke into a run. "Miss Angela!" she cried, leaping forward. Angela knelt just in time to catch her, holding the small body against her chest. Linda's arms wrapped tight around her neck. Angela's own arms shook with the force of emotion as she whispered, "Oh, sweetheart." When they pulled apart, Angela noticed something dangling from Linda's backpack. A small wooden apple keychain, weathered now, but still whole. You kept it?" Angela asked, her voice trembling. Linda's face lit up. "It's my magic apple. Daddy says you gave me superpowers that day." Angela's throat closed. She brushed a hand through the girl's hair. "No, darling. You had those powers all along." Mark stepped forward, his voice low and husky. "She calls you the magic lady from the airport. She even drew pictures of you in therapy. She never forgot." Angela looked up at him, her eyes glistening. "She looks incredible." Mark's smile faltered into something softer. "She is, because of you." A few days later, Angela joined Mark, Linda, and a group of children on a short walk to the nearby park. The little ones laughed and ran ahead, chasing butterflies, holding dandelions to the wind. Angela walked slowly, one hand guiding a boy who struggled to balance, the other hand carrying a girl's drawing. Behind them, Mark followed, Linda skipping at his side. He watched quietly, unseen, as Linda darted forward, grabbed Angela's free hand, and then reached back for his. For a brief, breathtaking moment, the three of them walked together. Angela, in the middle, holding both their hands. They looked like a family. Mark lifted his phone and snapped a picture. Not staged, not posed, just truth caught in a frame. And something deep inside him, something long dormant, stirred awake. That evening, Mark asked Angela to dinner. It was nothing extravagant. A small Italian restaurant tucked in a quiet corner of town, with fairy lights strung overhead. Angela wore a pale blue dress, simple and soft, while Mark arrived in a gray button-down, his smile gentler than she had ever seen it. They ate pasta and talked easily, about the children, about books, about dreams Angela had once buried too, deeply to speak of. At one point, Mark set down his fork, his gaze steady. "I don't think I ever thanked you the way I should have," he said. Angela tilted her head. "For what?" for reminding me it's okay to believe in people again. You showed me that kindness isn't just an idea, it's a choice. And it changes everything. Angela's breath caught, her lips parting in silence. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them shifted, thick with something unspoken, but undeniable. Neither called it love. Not yet, but it was. There, quietly blooming. 1 year later, Angela stood behind a velvet curtain, her hands pressed against a podium note card, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the audience might hear it. Before her stretched rows of white chairs in a grand New York City ballroom filled with teachers, therapists, and advocates from across the nation. Above the stage, a banner read, "National Conference on Special Education, Honoring Voices That Inspire." A hush fell as she stepped into the spotlight. Angela smoothed her dress and drew in a breath. "I want to tell you a story," she began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. 1 year ago, I was standing in an airport holding a ticket to New York, hoping this city would give me a new beginning. The room leaned in, every face turned toward her. But then, she continued softly, I heard a child crying. I saw a father desperate to save his little girl. He had no time left, no options, and she had no strength. Her eyes glistened in the light. I had a choice. She paused, glancing at her hands. I gave him my seat. The audience was silent. I thought I was giving up my future, Angela said, her voice breaking slightly. But that moment gave me something greater. Purpose. That child lived. That father became my friend. And that choice brought me back to what I love most, teaching children who don't just need lessons. They need love. Applause erupted, thunderous, filling the hall. From the side of the stage, Mark appeared, dressed in a dark navy suit, a plaque in his hands. He joined Angela at the podium, his voice resonant and proud. It is my honor, he said, to present the Educator of the Year award to a woman who proves that knowledge means little without heart. Angela Moore, the Sally. Audience rose in a standing ovation as he placed the plaque in her hands. Their eyes met, and between them passed a quiet, knowing smile. Later that night, when the hall was empty, Mark found her near the exit doors, still holding the plaque. Come, he said softly. Let me show you the city you missed last year. They walked together under golden streetlights as snowflakes drifted gently from the sky. A quartet played softly on the corner, their strings weaving a tender melody through the night air. Angela stopped, staring at the skyline. I never thought I'd be here, on this stage, in this city. Mark looked at her, his breath fogging, in the cold. I knew you would. From the moment you gave up that ticket, I knew. Angela laughed lightly, shaking her head. That's a bold assumption. Not bold, he said. Just certain. People like you change lives even when you think yours is falling apart. As they crossed a quiet street, Angela's foot slipped on the snow. She stumbled, but before she could fall, Mark's hand caught hers, steady and strong. She laughed nervously. I still don't know how to walk in snow. Mark didn't let go. His voice was low, almost a whisper. Then let me be the one who holds you up. And for the rest of the night, their hands stayed entwined. The months that followed brought seasons of change. Autumn leaves painted the bye. Schoolyard gold, children's laughter echoing through lighthouse learning. Angela sat in her office one afternoon, sipping tea, watching students chase a red ball outside. For the first time in years, she felt peace. Ms. Angela, she turned just in time to catch Linda racing into the room, her arms flung around Angela's waist. Angela laughed, hugging her back. Mark appeared in the doorway, holding 2 coffees. Your usual, he said with a smile. Their fingers brushed as she took the cup. In that simple touch, everything felt whole. Then came the evening that changed everything. Mark approached her after class, his eyes carrying a secret. Meet me in the library after school? When Angela walked in, she gasped. The room glowed, with lanterns and fairy lights. A path of candles led to the reading nook, where children stood holding handmade signs that read, Will you marry our principal? Her hands flew to her mouth, her heart trembling. Mark stepped forward, nervous but certain. You gave my daughter her life back. You gave this school hope. And you gave me a part of my heart I thought I'd never feel again. He lowered himself to one knee, pulling a velvet box from his pocket. Inside, a simple, elegant ring caught the glow of the candles. Angela Moore. His voice shook. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face as she nodded, laughter breaking through sobs. "Yes," she whispered. The children cheered as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The wedding was small but perfect. Beneath the old oak tree in the school courtyard, handmade paper flowers lined the aisle. Linda wore a white dress and carried a bouquet of fabric roses, standing proudly as the happiest little bridesmaid. Angela walked toward Mark, not with grandeur, but with the laughter of children surrounding them. When their hands clasped, when Linda slid between them, their family was complete. As the sun dipped low, they stood together, 2 hands joined, and a child's smaller hand resting between. A father, a daughter, and the woman who had chosen kindness when the world looked away. Conclusion: it all began with one quiet act of compassion. One seat, one choice, one heart brave enough to let go of its own dream to save another's. And in that moment, Angela discovered something greater than she ever sought: a family, a purpose, a love that turned loss into light. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness doesn't just change someone else's life, it changes yours too. This is Echoes of Heart. Thank you for watching this journey of compassion, resilience, and unexpected love. If Angela's story moved you, subscribe for more stories that remind us of the beauty in humanity. Until next time, remember, kindness is never wasted.